Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to take another look at our fundamentals demo. And specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to attempt to print out some more information back to the user. In this case, just some information about us to prove that we can use a system.out.println to create a nice formatted output. This video assumes a couple of things. Is number one, that you have NetBeans installed, some version of it, and some recent version of the JDK, as well as having been able to successfully build a project and run it from the command line. And so to begin with, you'll notice that I have this sample.txt file here. There's nothing special about it other than I'd like to just see this format as an example. And to begin with, what we're going to do is we're simply going to make a series of calls using our system.out.println function. And then inside, we're going to carefully type the same characters that we would like to see in our output in the text file, simply inside of our double quotes implying that it is going to be a string. In this case, it's going to be first name and then my first name, Gregory, system.out.println, and my last name, colon, and then Myers. And you can quickly see where you can speed this up a little bit. In this case, what I'm going to do is very carefully say system.out.println. I'm going to go ahead and include the double quotes. And then at this point, I'm just going to copy and paste a couple of them so that way we can speed this up a little bit. I have my Blazor ID, which also happens to be my email address that you can reach me at. And then my initials. And you oftentimes use your initials just to indicate where in code that you have made some changes. Now, before we go any farther, let's note a couple of things that we're using the static function println or print line, which does not require a new line. We're also not using any variables. We're simply just hard coding the string that we want inside of the double quotes. So we have plenty of places to improve this. The goal is that we just get a little bit of practice and a little bit more comfort with working with our environment and being able to produce a working Java executable. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to use my template, if you would, of system.out.println, and I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more of them. And so just very carefully paste 4, 5, 6, 7. And at this point, you can simply then go ahead and put in the information that you wish to display to the user inside of the double quotes. And so languages that I have used in the past, your goals for this class, your professional goals, maybe to get a good software development job, or perhaps graduate school. When you plan on graduating, I'm using an older computer for some of my demonstrations here. I have an older i7 processor, and then I have 4 gigs of RAM for this particular example. At this point, if we don't have any typos, we can either build using the little hammer, or we can right-click and build on the project tree, and then we can jump over to our command line. Once again, you'll see that I'm already in the correct location, my EE333 projects fundamentals demo, and I'm down in my build subfolder and in my classes subfolder, and we type in dir, and you should see the EE333 subfolder, which corresponds to the package. And if we were to drill down in this a little bit further, then you would see there is our fundamentals demo.class. And you'll note that it corresponds to a recent build. So I'm going to cd back up the directory. I'm going to go ahead and run our Java. Once again, you can look at the earlier video to be able to see how to check your Java version. But what we want to do is we want to run the class that has the main in it. So in this case, it's going to be EE333 fundamentals demo. And if you've done it all correctly, you should now get the output that corresponds to your print lines, as well as you'll see that it's specifying my arguments.length as 0. This particular example, we aren't actually using any command line arguments for anything, and so you would expect none to be passed. Well, you can imagine that this is going to get pretty cluttered pretty quick. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to move all of our code into a separate function, or specifically, we would like to move these series of system.out.printlines into a separate function and then just simply call that function when we want to. Now, we're not going to have any logic in this video. I just want to show you how to set up one of the functions, which is slightly different than what you did in your C programming language. But what you want to do now is you want to make sure that you're on the same level as your main. Notice the vertical bars here that indicate the hierarchy. And then we want to create now another function. We're going to make it a public function, and we'll talk a little bit about why it needs to be a public function, or in this case, it doesn't actually have to be, but we're going to make it a public function. We do want to make it a static function because we do not want to have to initialize a fundamentals demo object. We just simply want this to be available. And so we have a public static void because we want to have no return arguments. And we're just simply going to call this one GetInfo. And we're going to pass no input arguments, followed by curly braces. And I would encourage you then to do much the same pattern that we have with our main. In other words, we're going to go ahead and start a comment block here, but we aren't going to fill it in yet, other than we're going to simply say our params and then none. Now, at this point, what we want to do is we simply want to move all of our code using Control X, and then simply paste it inside of our function. Now, it's very important to make sure that this GetInfo function resides inside of the fundamentals demo class. And so make sure that your curly braces are correctly paired. At this point, when we build it, we should once again hopefully get success. We do. We come back out here to the command line, and we attempt to run our EE333 fundamentals demo once more, and we still get our prompt for the number of arguments that are passed to our Java runtime. However, we do not get the rest of the information that we had printed out earlier. And that is because, just like in C and in other languages, even though you have written the function, we haven't actually called it. And in order to call it, then we have a couple of ways that we can go about doing it. The first way is that we can simply just type in GetInfo. And this by itself, if we build it and then run it, you'll see that once again, we have our output back. However, I would like for us not to rely solely on calling the function by its name. Instead, what I would like for us to do is to leverage our package and our class so that early on you can get an appreciation for the structure of your code. And specifically, in this case, our fundamentals demo has a static function called GetInfo in it. And what I mean by that is what we will do is instead of calling it just with the function name, because it resides inside the same class, we can get away with that. Instead, what we want to do is we want to specify the full path, which is going to be EE333, which is the package name, fundamentals demo, which is the class name, and then GetInfo, which is going to be the function name. And so you can think of this then as the full path to your static function. And this is very helpful for a number of reasons. Most importantly is it helps you appreciate the structure of not only your code, but also of the framework in general. And what I mean by that is that we could technically get around this even with our system.out.println, but instead, when we are first working with the Java framework and the Java language for that matter, I think it's very important that we appreciate where all of these functions actually reside. In this case, this function resides inside of the EE333 package, inside of our class, and it is static, which means that we do not have to create an object called FundamentalsDemo. And we'll talk more about objects and classes later, but for right now, you know that this is the full path to our GetInfo function. If we build it once again, come back out to the command line and run it, and you'll see that there is no change in behavior. Now, in another video, we will see how we can selectively call our GetInfo, but hopefully at this point, you can understand how to create another static function, much like your main, and in this case, call it from your main. This should hopefully feel very similar to what you've seen in your C and C++ programming classes. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and thank you for watching.